Welcome to the video, everybody. In this video, we're going to be looking at how much stock should you order for your first product. It's a very, very important decision that you're going to make. Firstly, what product am I going to actually look to sell? But secondly, how many units am I going to order? So we're going to have a look at exactly how to do that. I'm going to keep this brief, about 10 to 15 minutes. So I don't want to keep you guys for too long. So we're going to make sure we're very efficient with this video. Before we jump in to look at some of the criteria and some of the important factors that you need to consider when launching and when placing that first order, we're going to have a look at a little survey. So we're all familiar with Jungle Scout, right? This source is Jungle Scout 2018. Quick survey that was carried out by Jungle Scout, which just looked at a sample of 2,500 sellers on FBA at the moment in the States. However, they do actually state that this is applicable and it can be compared to the UK market as well. It looks at some stats and some figures. So we're going to have a quick breakdown for a moment of these. So again, something I always talk about, the number one regret of all sellers surveyed in the 2,500 of the people who were surveyed is just not starting sooner. Again, start ASAP. The first most important factor is getting started. The second is how long your business has been running for. Again, you benefit massively from having sales history, having performance history, your ranking, lots of different things. But time helps you as a seller. When you get started, it's the most difficult part. Once you're established, it becomes much easier. And starting enables you to get to that stage. Again, out of their 2,500 sellers, after 18 months, right, so a year and a half, monthly profit is equal to 66% of the initial investment. Now, that's massive. So if you were to put in £1,000 initially to invest in this business model, including, stock and software, course, whatever you would put that £1,000 into, after 18 months, you're making £660 worth of profit. Now, in my opinion, that's very, very impressive. So £660, think what you could do with £660. A lot. It's a mortgage, it's a car, it's whatever you want. And if we look here, by 18 months, 50% of sellers report 10k in monthly revenue. That's not profit margin, but 10k in monthly revenue. After just 18 months, £10,000 a month. And again, this is a real, it's a real survey from Jungle Scout. This is actual sellers who are selling on Amazon. So super exciting. And a quick breakdown of this year. So seller profit averages. So in less than 18 months, so up to the 1.5 year mark, 50% of sellers are profiting between $157 and $2,500 a month in less than 18 months. 27%, so just under a third of all sellers are selling are profiting $2,500 monthly every month. So 1/3 of people before the 1.5 year mark are profiting $2,500, which is £1,700 approximately. If we look over here, more than 18 months, 27% of sellers, so again, just under a third, which would be at 33%, of generating $12,000 worth of profit per month. So astonishing figures here from Jungle Scout based on results that they've gathered from sellers on Amazon. Again, on average, revenue grows by 14% per month in the first couple of years, which is grows by 5 times a year, 14 by 5, roughly. It comes up to about 100%. So super exciting, positive note. We'll look at that to begin with. Now, why is stock so important? Well, there's a few different reasons. Okay, firstly, when you order your first amount of units in from China or wherever you're sourcing, the UK, you are going to obviously be selling those products over the first, let's say, for example, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Now, over those 5 weeks, your ranking within your category is going to drop. The lower the ranking, the better. So, for example, number 1 would be the best out of 100,000 products in a category. So as you start to sell, your ranking is going to drop, and you're going to become more visible to search terms organically, meaning that when people are searching for your product, they are going to be more likely to find you when your sales ranking is dropping and when it's low. Now, sales ranking comes from sales. Okay, so you're only gonna your BSR, the best seller ranking or sales ranking, is only going to improve when you make sales. Okay, so how does this tie in with stock? Well, if you, for example, order too little and you run out of stock too soon, what that means is that all of that work that you put in over, for example, 4 weeks of selling or 5 weeks of selling, and you sold out, let's say you bought 70 units and you sold out in 5 weeks, you would then reverse what you had done, or you would begin to reverse what you'd done. So all of that hard work you'd put in, getting sales, and dropping the ranking, dropping in the rankings, and gaining more visibility organically, improving your SEO, that would start to unravel. Because obviously you wouldn't be selling anymore, so it would ultimately be the same as just being still active and live and in stock, but not making any sales. What's going to happen? Your sales ranking is going to go back up, and you're going to drop down the pages again. Now, stock is important because obviously, if you don't run out of stock, this isn't going to happen. Okay, and you're going to keep riding that wave forward. You're not going to, let's look at an analogy here. You're on your surfboard, right, and you're cruising down the wave. Now, if you fall off the surfboard, that's the same as running out of stock. However, if you stay in stock, you're on that surfboard and you're heading for the shore. So a bit of a terrible analogy, but there we are. But very, very important to consider that. And sales ranking is super important in sales history. And again, dropping off the wagon, running out of stock causes problems, and ultimately it's going to reduce your revenue and your profit. So something we want to avoid. PPC spend, again, it ties in nicely with the sales ranking. You're going to have an aggressive PPC advertising campaign initially, whether it's, often it's automatic first, then we will shift over to a manual campaign where we can actually specifically target, long tail keywords, exact phrases, etc., etc. But you will spend money during your first few weeks selling on Amazon, advertising your product, and actually getting to the first page, not organically. So with your PPC, with your ad, will actually be shown on the first page, and you pay money for that, and you get sales for that. People will see your product even when you're right at the beginning of your journey, and people will buy it. Although you'll have to pay for it, you're still going to get sales. Now, the problem is, if you run out of stock again and you've spent, let's say you spent £100 on PPC and you've rised up in the search rankings, you've dropped from page 10, you're going up page 9, page 8, page 7. As the sales are coming in, you're starting to make organic sales. People are starting to buy it without seeing your ad. They're just seeing your product, sitting in its rightful place on page 3. If you run out of stock, guess what's going to happen? That PPC spend is going to be wasted, because ultimately, when you drop the rankings, when you're out of stock, you're going to have to do it all again. So it is far more beneficial as a seller to not run out of stock, because you're not going to have to duplicate what you'd previously done with PPC to start ranking again, because if you stay in stock, you're not going to need to do that anymore. Thirdly, time. Time is money. It wastes time running out of stock. You're not selling, you're twiddling your thumbs, waiting for stock to come in. So we don't want to be wasting time if we can avoid it. And if we run out of stock, ultimately dropping in sales ranking, having to redo PPC all over again and wait for the product. There might be a lead time of a couple of weeks, 5 weeks, even 4 weeks, if you factor in everything. That is a waste of time. So we don't want that. So my first mistake, right? I have since. It's very hard to predict stock. I'm looking at this as a first-time seller, but even as an established seller like myself, it's very hard to predict stock, because I can't accurately estimate how many sales I'm going to get every day. One day one product might sell 10, the next day it might sell 1. You can just work off averages. But my first product initially wasn't a success. It was in the end, but at the beginning it wasn't. I then took some advice and did it properly, and it was a success. But at the beginning, one of the reasons it wasn't a success was because I didn't order enough stock. I ordered far too little. It was going slow. I didn't reorder. Then it started to go slightly better. I ran out of stock, and all of that hard work went down the drain. So, that was my mistake. It's always going to be something that sellers are battling. Predicting demand isn't easy. Things are seasonal. People have different interests. We have phases that people go through, and you just got to work with what you've got. So that was my first mistake. Now, if we move down, I wanted to have a look at the actual answer to this question. So, how many units should I order? as we're looking at this as a first-time seller, not someone who's been selling for a long time. Right? I'm going to tell at the end of this short presentation here, I will explain how to calculate units to order as an established seller who's got sales history, etc. But we're going to look at for a first-time person who's interested in FBA. They see the potential, looking to get started. So minimum order quantity, MOQ. You're going to see this term, this abbreviation a lot online on Alibaba, and it just means what is the minimum amount that you can order from a particular supplier in China or wherever you're looking at. Now this will vary depending on the size of the factory, depending on the company that you're dealing with. It can be very high, up to sort of 5,000 units is a minimum order, usually for much smaller items like napkins or something that you might generally buy more of. But it will range from 50 units, which was I think roughly what I bought on my first order, which was a mistake, right up into 5,000-10,000 as a minimum order quantity. Much more unlikely to be 10,000 or 5,000. But minimum order quantity is something to think about. It doesn't necessarily mean you've always got to go for the minimum. Absolutely not. The minimum order isn't always the best order. So make sure you consider these next things that we're going to look at here. But it's always a good baseline to know what the minimum order quantity is, so you can work up from there and kind of establish how many you're going to need to go for. Economies of scale. So essentially what this means is you have to factor in that the more you buy, you're going to get it for cheaper. Right? Economies of scale just means I buy more, I get each unit for slightly less, whether it's 5 pence less a unit, it all adds up. So, factoring in, is it better for me to just order that extra 100 units because I get a reduction in price by 10% per unit? So really it works out better. Something to consider as well when, discussing things with your manufacturers and speaking to them about what the best offer is. Always good to negotiate. Speak to different manufacturers. Again, we look at the criteria in my course, but make sure that you're only talking and negotiating with established manufacturers who are gold sellers, etc. But you're going to want to negotiate the price. Don't always take their first price. Absolutely not. Negotiate, try and reduce it as much as you can. This can be done over email or WhatsApp, and you can gauge this from what they advertise on their page. You might see the offer that they've got and try and reduce it by 10%. How many should I order? Competition. We're going to get to exactly how many at the rule of thumb. So the competition, have a look at your competition. Okay, if you're selling on the first page, if the product you're selling, you look at the competition on the first page, the first 15 listings, and they're only selling 10 units a month, the best, it's a really expensive product, and they're only doing 10 units a month, you're not going to go and order 400 units, because if the best seller is only doing, 10 products a month, that's going to take you 40 months. 4 years to sell those products. You're obviously not going to do that. So always factor in what the competition are doing in your category. So if they're selling really low amounts, you're not going to use this rule of thumb to apply to everyone. It's just a general rule of thumb. So always have a look at what your competition are doing, how many sales they are generating on average on the first page, and you can then gauge how many they are doing a month, and then projecting forward, you're obviously not going to be at that level straight away, but what your product has got the potential to do per month, you might want to reduce it by 30% and sort of think, okay, well, that seems like a reasonable figure. Now, the rule of thumb, I always, and again, my experience and my, my interaction with other sellers in the UK and the US, a general rule of thumb would be to order between 200 and 300 units initially, okay, generally speaking. Now, in the States, it's slightly more because the market is bigger. It's more saturated, but it is bigger. So there's a bigger market with more sales, up to 4 times as many. However, in the UK, the market is growing massively and we've got far less sellers. So there's a lot more room for people to sell and make up those margins. So the rule of thumb, between 200 and 300 units. In the States, it can be 500 plus. 200 or 300 units is going to give you enough time to start selling. If you do a giveaway, you run a PPC campaign. Let's say, for example, you've sold 100 units in the first month, and you think, right, I need to order now, and you place the next order. Meanwhile, you've still got 100 units left in your inventory, and you've got time to wait for that next order to come through. It might be a 30-day lead time. your order is being produced by the manufacturers in China, your remaining 100 units are keeping you tied over. They're starting to, you're starting to accelerate. Your sales are going up, and you wait for your products to arrive. In a nice timely fashion. They come into the country just as you're going down to your lower end of your units. You replenish your stock and you keep the momentum going. Okay, it's all about momentum with Amazon FBA. I've just gone out of stock of one of my products, tried to predict it, didn't get it right, but as a first-time buyer, it's worth it, looking at all the information that's out there and trying to get it right the first time. Now, as an established seller, you can actually use Amazon's internal recommendations, so they will actually inform you when to restock your inventory based on how many you've been selling, how many units over the last week, month, or 4 months. So you can actually download reports which suggest to you when you need to restock for a certain product and how many products you've got left and how long they will last you. So that's pretty straightforward. It's just in your Seller Central and your product inventory page, looking at inventory planning and when you need to order and how many you need to order as well. It actually will tell you everything. But as a first-time seller on FBA, you're not going to have that privilege. So do it the right way. Okay, Amazon FBA literally is a machine. It will churn out numbers that you won't believe. Christmas this year is going to be exciting. I'm super excited for Christmas. I'm super excited for all of my core students for Christmas because they've got enough time at this stage in the middle of the year to get ready and prepare for a whirlwind that will come in November and December. So I hope this video was helpful. Drop a comment below and like the video. Hugely appreciate it if you can do that. It helps a lot with the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.